What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to the AEW All Out post-show pay-per-view-point edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, as you can see, and I'm flying solo for this edition. Of course, it is midnight, and technically it is September 8th, and there is quite a bit to break down, but honestly, not a whole lot for me to say again, and I hate to do that for another AEW show and another pay-per-view point in general, but yeah, we're going to break down everything that happened. I'm going to give you the results, talk about my review elements of this, anything else I kind of feel like breaking down and all that. So as always, I invite you to do the same if you are listening to this live, which I don't anticipate many people are going to be doing on that. If you're listening to it after the fact, of course, then also leave your comments in the comment section below or any of the other kind of places that you can chime in. You know, there is the Discord, for instance. Always chat it up there, and keep in mind though, if you are on the YouTube side of things, then we've got the whole Marketplace stuff. Make sure that you hit the like button on this video, make sure you are subscribed, ring that notification bell for those other email alerts. Make sure that you, if you do have the monetary means to help us out, click on the thanks button, the join button. That's the same thing as the Patreon, so if you're interested in the Dark Casts or the Pick Your Poison tier or something, either way works perfectly fine. It's exactly the same. Redbubble and TeePublic is where you can pick up your merchandise options too if you are interested in, you know, getting a t-shirt or a hat or something along those lines. I see we've got YK Beast in the chat. What's going on? Yeah, let us know what you thought about this pay-per-view, and I'm gonna just kind of roll along and break this down. So I'll be checking this chat. You know, if the super chats pop up, I'll pay extra attention to those. But you know, it's become a running thing for me to do these AEW shows and some of the WWE ones too, and for me to kind of repeat the phrase, I don't have a lot to say about something, but blah, blah, blah. And I am going to repeat that quite a bit here tonight. It depends on how long I want to go for this podcast. To be perfectly honest, I kind of want to make it a short one because of the fact that I don't really have a whole lot to break down, but it's all going to depend on if you guys are chatting it up and stuff. I have nothing pretty much at all to say about the 0 hour for this. There were 4 matches. There was the half-hour preview with Jeff Jarrett, RJ City, and Renee Paquette, where they just broke down the card and all. But my recurring criticism of AEW shows when it comes to like the 0 hour and all that is, if you're gonna put an hour's worth of extra matches on top of this, I kind of want to care about them in some fashion. And here's what happened. The Acclaimed beat the Iron Savages. Who cares, really? Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, and Hologram beat the Premier Athletes. As if anybody had any expectations that it would go any other way. And it doesn't matter. The trios match with the Bang Bang Gang, they beat the Dark Order. Kind of another pointless match too, because the Bang Bang Gang is seemingly starting a feud with another trios team instead, with Cage of Agony. So instead of doing that match, they did the softball, just have them beat somebody else, and it's the Dark Order that takes the hit kind of a thing. So it's like, okay, Bang Bang Gang, clearly the priority team there. Dark Order, you just waste 5-10 minutes, whatever long it was. Because I can't even be like, oh, because the matches are still super fun and whatever. They're just matches. It's like, you know, the whole phrasing of like, you don't want to waste calories on a meal that doesn't particularly taste all that great. That's how I feel with a lot of AEW matches. The WWE stuff, that's another whole criticism of like, why is there so much filler and why does it take so much time on a pay-per-view to get to the only few matches that are on there? But with AEW, it just feels like it's filler in a different way. It's like bulking out, if I keep with the snack talk type of recipe, it's like bulking something out by adding filler ingredients. You know, who wants meatballs that are predominantly breadcrumbs, or who wants to fill up on bread at a really expensive dinner when you could be having, you know, some really, really tasty things. Bread's great and all, but if that's what you're not going for, and you're going for the main events and the things that should really stand out to you, and you get a whole bunch of other stuff, then by the end of the pay-per-view, at least I feel this way 9 times out of 10, I don't want to have any more wrestling. And like, watching 6 hours worth of constant AEW match, and they all have the same feel to them too, for the most part. They're slightly different, but they mostly have that same kind of vibe. It just makes me go, I don't want to watch any more wrestling. I just want to switch something else on. I want to, play a game or watch a movie or watch a TV show or zone out on TikTok or something. So when you have these 3 0-hour matches, I decided I wasn't even going to pay full-blooded attention to him. And I still felt like, can we not bother with this hour and a half? But I have to watch them for for my job. So it's one of the better things that comes along with that. It's something that I've been struggling a lot with this year. I wish I could just like shut my brain off and just be like a brand new fan to things, But they had a little segment in between there. Sky Blue came out because it's in Chicago, so they needed to kind of usher her out there a little bit. And she didn't really give much of an update on her injury, but Mariah May interrupted. She said, Chicago sucks. I'm not going to do my celebration here. Pushed down Sky Blue. Was getting ready to hit her with her crutch, and then Queen Aminata made the save. So the bitter, here's where you're going to be like, oh my God, Tony doesn't like anything. It's like, I do. I just don't like a lot of things that I don't like. You know what I mean? Am I supposed to be super duper excited about Queen Aminata challenging Mariah May going forward? I'm not particularly. Queen Aminata isn't somebody that I've seen much of, but what I've seen, she's fine, but I'm not like, oh man, I feel like there's a disconnect between at least me as a fan and the way that AEW things are presented, where I'm supposed to think everything is the most amazing thing in the world. And WWE does this too, don't get me wrong. But AEW, I think, treats it with like an extra level of, not only should you feel like this is the most important and amazing and super fun idea in the world, but you're also going to be as amped up as you're at like at least a 9 out of 10 for almost everything. And when it comes to things like that, like I've already been pretty much looking at Mariah May's title reign as like, this isn't off to a great start for me. I'm not really digging it. And she doesn't seem like she's as big of a deal. Putting her against Queen Aminata, am I supposed to think that this is the mid-card title now? Because that's what I'm getting the vibes for. And that's just not something that it doesn't speak to me as a fan. So for the big like pop of Sky Blue being in Chicago, I'm not a person in Chicago. I don't care about that stuff, even in the areas that I'm from. And then on top of that, this segment, it's just, it did nothing for me. And then you follow it up with another 3-way trios match, Top Flight, and Shane Taylor Promotions and the Beast Mortos losing to the Undisputed Kingdom. It's a match. It's fine. But if you missed it, you didn't miss anything. You missed a couple spots here and there of like the Beast Mortos doing something that was kind of fun. But he always does things that are kind of fun. So, in the grand scheme of things, is it going to be like, oh my God, you missed the move of the night or like the match of the night, or it's a match of the year candidate or any of that stuff? No, it's just a match. It's fine. So we get into the actual show, and by this point, it's an hour and a half in, and I'm already like, okay, this is kind of they pump up my energy a little bit. MJF beats Daniel Garcia. Good match. I liked it. Don't really have a whole lot to say about it. That's especially true when it comes to when it's just a good match and that there's no like real big storyline elements. And there were some stuff later on in the show, and there was something here even, kind of. But when it's a good match and there aren't like standout moments that make me go like, man, we have to talk about this moment here or anything, I really don't know what to say. And that applies to almost everything too, for anybody that's wondering. Like, this isn't just an AEW thing. This is a WWE thing. If you go back and check out other things, this is movies, TV shows. I don't know. It's just sort of, there are, unless it's like fantastic or something really stands out for me, I tend to struggle a little bit in being super verbose about something that's just good. So MJF and Daniel Garcia. It's a good match. MJF wins. He had a low blow during the match. He ended up winning, but then he doesn't get the last laugh. Garcia takes out MJF, so it's kind of a victory in that kind of sense. It's a way to extend the feud. It's a way to give MJF a win back from his loss. So I agree with the booking, and I think that this was overall in a pretty decent spot on the card. But if you missed it, again, I don't think like you need to go back and check this match out. So take that for what you will. The match that followed it, I wasn't as big of a fan of. This was the AEW World Tag Team title match with the Young Bucks beating the Blackpool Combat Club's Willow, Yuta, and Claudio Castagnoli. Fine match, not as good as the MJF and Daniel Garcia match. Kind of seemed like the crowd wasn't super particularly into it. Maybe, I don't know. Like there was a guy that we're looking at that like kept yawning throughout this whole thing. And it's, these are four talented people. They went out there, they had a rock solid enough match, and then it ended. The Young Bucks retain. Okay. We know we're going in a slightly different direction now. So now I guess that's just a means to an end. And I'm wondering when this Elite versus Team AEW story is going to pick back up again, or if that's just a dud at this point because they haven't been really doing that. So it's kind of giving me a little bit of vibes that like maybe this is another one of those stories that they had an idea and they pivoted a bunch of times and then it just sort of fizzled out. If not, and they're going to pick this back up, they're going to need to pick it up in some kind of a way that builds some real steam. Because now, who would be part of Team AEW? And why would they bother to care? You know? So, what was next after that? Will Ospreay beating Pac to retain the AEW International Championship. Arguably the best match of the night, I think. This match was a whole lot of fun, top to bottom, start to finish. I really enjoyed a lot of what they were doing here. Move by move, this was my favorite match. Ospreay and Pac have good chemistry. They're flipping around. They're doing some good stuff here and there. So I would say go back and check this match out. This would be one of the few segments that if you missed it, I do think that maybe you should check it out. Of course, if you are not trying to be like a completionist or something, and I am far from a completionist, keep that in mind. You know, I don't watch Rampage, for instance, like ever for the most part. I watched it this week, but I didn't, however many weeks leading up to that. If you just want to see a really good like bell-to-bell match, Ospreay versus Pac is definitely one that I would recommend. But after that, they eventually bounce back around to the idea that Ricochet is going to get the title shot against Will Ospreay in the future. So they had a little backstage segment where they were just kind of talking some trash and stuff. So whenever that happens, whether it's Grand Slam, upcoming episode of Dynamite, like the Title Tuesday or the anniversary show or something, there are some different ways that they could go about doing that. Wrestle Dream, of course, is not that far off either. So if the idea of Ricochet needs to get some more wins under his belt before he can challenge is the story they're going with, then he has to wrestle some more matches in the meantime. And then they can pull the trigger on whatever that is. That match is going to be amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Chicago Street Fight was next. That was another really good match. That was Kris Statlander beating Willow Nightingale by submission. Not the outcome that I originally thought was happening when they were leading into this story, and they did the whole thing about setting up the gimmick match for the pay-per-view, and originally the CMLL World Women's Championship was on the line too. That got pulled from this. I don't really know why, but potentially it could be because of this outcome. Maybe it was that they wanted Kris Statlander to win, and they just didn't want her to win the championship, which makes sense if that's the case. But then that kind of makes me wonder, why did she need to win this? Is the feud continuing? And if it is, where do they go from here? If it's not, then I wonder why they went with Kris Statlander winning this. I don't know. But I like the match a lot. I am not opposed to Kris Statlander winning. And this was arguably my third favorite match of the night, I think. So thumbs up. I'm going to go back and check out some highlights on this one too. What was the next one? 4-way for the AEW Continental Championship. Kazuchika Okada retained over Konosuke Takeshita, Orange Cassidy, and Mark Briscoe. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't like this as much as I was expecting that I would. I had more hype heading into this than what I ended up getting out of it. So I was disappointed. But to say that, I know that some people are going to take that and be like, oh my God, he hated it. No, I didn't hate it. I thought that this was going to be better than what it was. I thought that this was going to pretty much blow my mind and be like the match of the night. And it just wasn't. But it was a good match. They had solid back and forth action from all four people. They kept up the pace at a pretty well tone for, at this point, it was starting to kind of go like, all right, I'm getting a little bit tired of the whole constant stream of pro wrestling being bombarded into me. But that I felt more so in the next match. So this was kind of petering down a little bit, and I expected it to be like one of my major highlights. So I'm okay with Okada retaining. I like that they are continuing this whole thing with Takeshita. So it seems like maybe by the time at least we get to the Continental Classic, maybe Takeshita is going to be the one that wins that. Maybe they're going to get a title shot one-on-one in between at like Full Gear or something. But in any case, it was a good match, not as great as I anticipated. And at that point, we led into Mercedes Moné against Hikaru Shida for the TBS Championship. And I just cannot seem to get myself super invested in the women's division lately. And by lately, I mean, it's probably been over a year and a half or something. Something doesn't click with me. And it's not a matter of like poor talent for a lot of these different women in AEW, because a lot of them are really, really talented. But I just can't get invested. I don't know. Like the Chicago Street Fight was a lot of fun. I liked that quite a bit. But then Mercedes Moné, I can't seem to really care. And when she's up against somebody like Shida, I'm like, all right, Shida's not going to win. So I got something in my eye. Don't worry about this. It's like Shida's not going to win. So I'm not invested in the potential title change. So you need to hook me on the match itself. You need to give me some reason to make me go, okay, now my eyes are glued. Never happened in the match whatsoever. The entire match, I just sat there going, all right, crap. It's like 10 something. That means that we have 2 more matches at least. So this is at least going to 11:30, most likely, because they're going to drag this for about 20 something minutes and then whatever and all that. I'm watching the clock more than I'm watching the match. And yeah, I'm sure if I were there, I would be more invested too. So maybe the crowd is another thing. Maybe you listening, maybe you're like, this was the best match of the night. I don't know where you're coming from, Tony. To each their own. And I'd love to hear those descriptions in the comments below to just like explain what I didn't connect with and what you did. Because to me, this was the downer of the night, other than the 0 hour. I lost my energy during this, and I didn't fully recover from it, to be perfectly honest. It's part of the reason why this is a shorter podcast again. It's because I just don't really want to be reiterating a lot of like what I saw, because I'm tired of pro wrestling for tonight. But they just didn't do anything for me with changing it up. So Moné retains, saw it coming. Move on. Next challenger, whoever it is, she's going to retain against that person too. She's not losing that title for any like near time. And then they had an uphill battle for the next match. It was Bryan Danielson against Jack Perry for the AEW World Championship. Took a little bit of time for me to start to get back invested into this, but it was a good match. More importantly, though, after Bryan Danielson retains his title in a match that I thought went on a little too long than it needed to, because it was starting to drag a little bit again. I was finding myself kind of looking at the clock more. The most interesting thing happened after the match. So Killswitch, Luchasaurus, comes out, attacks Bryan Danielson. They have a little stare down between Killswitch and Jack Perry. Sorry about the stupid noises outside. I don't know why people feel... If you're the type of person, by the way, that feels like at midnight or whatever, that you need to have like a car or a motorcycle that you rev the engine for, you're not fucking cool. And I really hope that you learn your lesson in the future, that you're a jackass. God, I sound so bitter. That's maybe because I am. After the match, this whole Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus kind of interaction led to the Patriarchy coming out, and they were about to have this Christian Cage cash-in thing. Try to say that 5 times fast. And Jon Moxley then steps up. He stands in between Danielson in the ring and Patriarchy on the ramp. The rest of the Blackpool Combat Club, including Pac, come out to kind of even the odds a little bit. And I already thought that was kind of neat. So then I'm thinking, oh, okay, cool. Like maybe the next thing in the future is going to be the Patriarchy versus them. And that's going to be, the feud for the trios title going forward. And they're going to, switch around, whatever. Even though that's kind of a follow-up and all that. But, ended up being wrong anyway. So after that, Moxley, Claudio, and Pac turn on Danielson. And they start choking him out with a plastic bag. Marina Shafir pops up. And Pac is holding back Wheeler Yuta because Yuta is upset and I guess wasn't in on the plan to attack Danielson. So it's a little convoluted and I'm not sure how they're going to go about this story, but that's also part of what's making it intriguing to me because I don't know where they're going to take this story. Is Wheeler Yuta going to just be like, oh, well, I'm going to go with the rest of the crew because they're my co-tag team champions? Or is he going to want to leave the group and maybe they're going to excommunicate him and that somebody else is going to be brought into the mix? Which if that's the case, then why are they the trios champions? Then that calls back into the whole like Tony Khan needs to stop booking these trios titles as like you can win that and then you're going to win other titles. You're going to have double champions over and over. You're going to win them and then relinquish them and then win them back and do all this like kind of crazy stuff. I'm kind of tired with the experimentation of the trios titles because it's really devaluing them in my mind. But maybe they take it in a direction that I don't see coming. Maybe they just keep it as simple as just Yuta just goes, okay, never mind. Which if that's the case, then I'm also curious why he wasn't just in on it to begin with. So the elements that are unknowns are very intriguing. And, I'm down to see Moxley or Claudio or whoever against Danielson in the future. So we have some potential title challengers. We still have the Christian Cage thing. So I'm down for that. I think that's pretty cool. And then the finale of the night was the unsanctioned lights out steel cage match. And this one is definitely one that I think you should go back and check out. The whole, staple gun and bloody this and that type of element to it. We knew that was going to be something, but they kind of upped the ante in a little bit where I liked this a lot. They brought out a wooden spike that was supposed to be part of the burned down house. That was a really nice touch. So, both guys are all bloodied up. They're having a solid brawl and everything in this. And we end up ending this segment with something that I thought was also really cool. And it did another thing that like turned in a different direction from where I was anticipating. So if you missed it, I'm giving you the breakdown now. Hangman Page takes the grill out of Swerve Strickland's mouth. And I thought he was going to just break the grill, like stomp on it. So instead he pulls out a different little tool and I'm trying to figure out what it was at the time. And then it's a hypodermic needle. So then I thought to myself, oh, okay, he's going to threaten to pull out his teeth. And that's why he took the grill out. And then when he actually injected him with whatever that was, and like shoved that into his cheek and did that, I was like, oh shit, is he actually going to pull one of his teeth out? Maybe Swerve has like a fake tooth or, a cap that they can just kind of like and just pop out or something. And then that's something that we haven't really seen in pro wrestling. At least not like, mainstream pro wrestling that I can think of. People have had their teeth knocked out unintentionally. And people have had, little gimmicks and stuff like that. But I'm sure, indie federations have people doing, chopping off of fucking ears and stuff like that. But instead, it goes into a chair shot to the head. And again, I'm kind of curious what the thought process was there of like the hypodermic needle and then the chair shot to the head. But then, hey, it's something different. So that's pretty cool. And of course, I'm naturally hoping that the chair shot was gimmicked in a way that is not actually going to cause any kind of problem. It's something that's been debated about quite a bit recently with some other chair shots to the head. So you have to assume that they probably did take the necessary precautions and they're not just blasting Swerve in the fucking cranium with a steel chair properly. So assuming that's the case, assuming that it was safe, I like that a lot. That's a cool finish to just be like, you knocked his brains and got him scrambled, and whatever you injected him with the hypodermic needle, maybe it's some kind of like, anesthesia, and it's going to be like a means to keep him knocked out or something. Maybe he's going to wake up and he's going to be really interested in having some fried chicken cutlets and gnocchi, like I did the last time with my my wisdom teeth. That was a thing. Which, by the way, I went to that place that I was curious about that, and ended up getting that. So that was a really good meal. So I was really happy about that when I was all looped up on my anesthesia, and it worked out. I did that yesterday. So I like the finish of this. I thought that was a good way to end the pay-per-view, and the overall pay-per-view is one of those things where if you take out and fast forward the segments that are kind of blah, like you don't watch the 0 hour and you kind of trim some other things here and there, if you tighten it up, I think it's really a rock solid, damn good pay-per-view, and it still is. Like, I'm not going to say that suddenly you add the 0 hour and the whole thing crumbles and it all sucks. But I just don't like how these are 6 hour long shows, 6.5 hour long shows, whatever it might be. And that it's just a bombardment of the same style match. One. Because it's exhausting. And I know that some people would be like, well, Tony, you can watch a 3 hour movie of, the director's cut of Terminator 2, where you can binge more than one movie in a row, or you can binge even 6 episodes of a TV show in a row potentially or something. And yeah, that's true, but that's because there's something at least different to it, or because I'm staying 100% invested the whole time. And when you have some dip downs in some things like the Mercedes Moné match, I end up just sort of being like, yeah, I think I've had my fill. And then they need to kind of work their way back up. And, they did with the final 2 matches. Like, for instance, if those 2 matches had came before the Mercedes Moné match, then, I don't know how my momentum would have been, but then everything would have came crashing down after those matches. So the same applies to WWE stuff too. When WWE has all these pay-per-views where they just fill it with a bunch of commercials, by the time I've seen 20 minutes worth of nonsense, now you're going to start the next match and I'm going to have to go, all right, now we're back into wrestling mode. So it's like, I want that hybrid between these 2 companies, and it keeps end up being the 2 ends of the spectrum of like, you're not having enough matches. You're having way too many matches. You're giving me too much downtime. You're not giving me enough downtime. This is a little bit shorter than it needs to be. This is way too long. So I want to just marry those together. And then I guess, I don't know what era I would go back to, because, Robin Callum would be better at saying, this is more so this type of, time frame. This is 2000 such and such. But, I would want my pay-per-views, I think, ideally, to be maybe a half-hour long pre-show and then a 3-hour long show. And for it to be between matches, most matches be around that 10 to 15, sometimes 20, sometimes 25 type match limit, and time frame limit, I mean. And then to have, a 3-minute or so buffer in between, something if you want to go back to the bathrooms or something like that. I don't know, grab sliced pizza or something. But it's a bombardment is the best way for me to say it. So yeah, to answer the realist in the chat, it's probably never going to change. And that's probably going to be a perpetual review of mine when it comes to AEW shows is, yes, a good portion of the matches were good. Some of them were a little bit not as great as I was hoping. Some of them were pretty great. And some of them were blah. And then, hey, if you really, really love this style and you just can't get enough, and it's just Barney Gumble, hook it to my veins type of a thing, that's another thing. If you're somebody like me that likes a little bit more variety in their acts, then you are kind of missing the variety here. And that's been my criticism of why I don't watch Ring of Honor. That's been my criticism of why I never really super got into, when I've tried watching Wrestle Kingdom in the past, for instance, or any kind of New Japan show. Part of it's, of course, that I am just not invested in the characters and the stories, but also is because there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of characters. It seems to be here's a guy that can do a lot of moves, and here's a guy that can do a lot of moves. eventually I just tune out. Same as actually, recently with the Olympics. Like, I can't get into sports in that way. And that's why I've never been into baseball, football, hockey, soccer, basketball. Like, basketball to me is very much took a shot. Oh, they made that one. Took a shot. So it's that over and over again. And I once in a while I enjoy a good baseball game or, whatever. But that sporting element to it, it's not quite the hook for me personally. And I know that I could have done a hook joke there. So, it's kind of like when you follow a movie reviewer, a movie critic that syncs up with your taste, then you know that if you follow that movie critic and they say that they really liked a movie, that you're probably going to like it. And the same kind of applies here. So if you've followed Smark Out Moment for long enough and you know how you look at the AEW shows versus how myself or Rob or Callum looks into it, I would say, generally speaking, based off of the way that my friends that are into pro wrestling and some other people that I talk to and all, how they approach their point of view compared to mine and Rob's and Callum's and all. Rob is definitely the middle ground between myself and Callum. And Callum is very much on the very pro AEW side, where like, if this is his style, he really loves these things. So if you are of that, like, man, I can't get enough AEW, they never miss, then eventually we're going to have Callum's point of view about AEW All Out. I don't know if we're going to do it on the hot tags or if we're going to just like quickly mention that on the AEW roster thing that we do. We're going to do like the tier list of the AEW roster and the WWE roster. I don't know which one we're doing first, but maybe we'll talk about that very quickly there, and it'll most likely get a glowing review. And Rob will most likely be super positive about it too. But I think that between the three of us, it's more likely that it's like, Callum has it the highest and then Rob and then I do. And it's still a thumbs up for a pay-per-view. It's still something that's good. It's just, it's 12:36 right now in the morning. And I am like, okay, I'm tired and I don't want to write anymore about wrestling because I've had an overload of wrestling today. And I want to do anything but watch wrestling. Whereas there are some other shows here and there where, maybe I watch like an episode of like NXT or SmackDown or, whatever it might be. Less so those. Those are sometimes things where it could be like, man, I still kind of want to do like a mock draft or something. And AEW pay-per-views, I tend to just be like, all right, I've had my fill for the night. So, it is what it is. I think it's still a pretty solid, good pay-per-view. No titles changed hands, so there's not as much to talk about there, but we had some pretty fun little moments. We had some pretty fun matches, so it's a good one. Not my pay-per-view of the year, and I don't know what I'm going to give the pay-per-view of the year yet because I have to go back on my notes and check to see what all the other ones are. And we still have some more pay-per-views coming up. We still have Wrestle Dream, Full Gear, and what's the name of the other one? World's End. So maybe the three of those are even better than these. Maybe they are, good point for the realist of it. Music's the same way. Sometimes if you're feeling like, a particular type of music, you might just be like, man, I could binge, 90s dance music for hours and hours. And just every song's like, wanna be my lover. And you're like, oh man, I really love this song. It's a great one. Rhythm as Dancer, something like that. Or sometimes even my collection of music, I have let me see real quick how many songs I have in my like own rotation of music. That is, do I not have like the number that I can see here? It is 5,252. 52 songs. And even then, sometimes these are songs that are like my favorite songs and songs that I really, really love. Even then, sometimes I'm just kind of like skip. And the next thing I know, I'm like, I guess I just don't want to listen to music right now. But not to say that I was like not super into watching wrestling tonight, but I got my fill. And now for however long I'm going to be up going forward, I am going to do something completely unrelated to wrestling. I don't know what it's going to be. We'll see. But that is the game plan for the things coming up soon. I just mentioned we're going to do the AEW roster tier list, men's and women's divisions. We're going to do the WWE roster tier list, men's and women's divisions, and that'll be spread out, 2 videos this week, 2 videos next week type of deal. We also have to record another Darkcast coming up for either the end of September or the beginning of October. Still haven't decided yet if I can get the opportunity to do another one in October, because my goal is to do, I think I mentioned this on the other Darkcast, my goal is to do a follow-up of what we were talking about before with like old pay-per-view names and kind of ranking them in a tier list because of Bad Blood. So I wanted to do that, but I also had this idea of doing a fantasy booking of an Ultimate Halloween Havoc and like a spooky card of like characters that are all like, House of Black, and well, maybe the House of Black, maybe I keep it to WWE, but you know what I mean, the Corporate Ministry or like Undertaker, Bray Wyatt, Wyatt 6, that kind of deal. I haven't worked on that yet, and I don't know when I would be able to record that, so I'm more than likely in September going to record the Bad Blood thing and put that around the time of Bad Blood, and then if I get the opportunity to do the Halloween Havoc one in late October, then I'll knock that out and kind of work on the card in between, while I'm like just, not recording stuff. But that's potentially something on the, back burner that might come in the next like week or so. We also have to figure out what we're going to do for our main event for one of these weeks in October that I'm not going to be around to record. So that's the 16th, I think, of October. So if anybody has any suggestions of what they would like to do, like us to do, that we could do in advance for that. Actually, maybe that might be the Ultimate Halloween Havoc thing. And then maybe I don't know. We'll figure it out. Point being, there's a couple podcasts coming up, and some of them are going to be recorded in advance for October. And we're also going to try to do an In Your House Bad Blood fan outs table, watching the entire pay-per-view, which is, I believe, just a little under 3 hours long. So, by now we already know what happens there. I mean, it came, 20 something years ago, 27 years ago, whatever it is. So, stay tuned for those things. As always, though, if you do want us to do something in particular that we are not currently having on the schedule, the Pick Your Poison tier on Patreon or the YouTube channel membership subscription is the absolute best way to do it. But even if you don't have the funds for that, if you just toss it out in the comments or you make some kind of suggestions, I try to keep those things in mind. I write a lot of them on my list of like future topics to get into, and keep all that in mind. But yeah, show your support on that front. Show your support in every way that you can. Hit the like button on this. It helps out quite a bit. And make sure that you check out anything else that's happening. Make sure you keep paying attention to smarkoutmoment.com too, because there's always more stuff happening there. Check out fanboysanonymous.com. I don't know the next thing that I'm going to be doing there because everything just keeps getting pushed back. And I said to somebody yesterday or the day before, if I could freeze time and work on all the projects that I wanted to work on, and, just like the next thing it's still, it's 12:43 right now, and I unfroze and it's 12:44. Let's just say do that. The amount of time that I would probably spend just to catch up to the projects that I wanted to do would be something like 3.5 years. And that's not factoring in like big projects too. Just like, for instance, the Blueprint project, that's not factoring that in, but like to do the podcasts that I have on the back burner, to write the articles that I have on the back burner. So there's an infinite amount of stuff I want to get out. I just don't have the time for it. So we'll see what ends up happening. But, if you show your support for Fanboys, show your support for Smark Out Moment, all that stuff under a mango tree, it all helps out quite a bit. It's all going to, keep the things going here. So if you want to check out any of that stuff, go to amangotree.com and see all the links for all that stuff. There's links to Tony Mango related stuff as well. Anthony Mango stuff, not just the Tony Mango things. But check out my letterbox. Hit me up on LinkedIn if you're on there or whatever. I don't care. All that good stuff is on that link tree. You can find all that stuff all the time. And I mentioned, of course, Fanboys Anonymous. You can go click on those sites for all the blue brand links and stuff. And the Fantasy League, we have a little bit of an update on that recently. I stole CM Punk from Rob's team, so he wasn't particularly happy about that. But yeah, that's going to do me in for AEW All Out, the 2024 Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show. So thank you to those in the live chat. Thank you to those who listened to this after the fact. Thank you to anybody who was live during the pay-per-view on EWN or Smart Cut Moment or whatever. And I will see you next time with the... I'm assuming AEW roster tier list, probably for the women's division. It's probably what we're going to do. Yeah, more than likely that's going to be the next. All right, well, adios, everybody. This has been another Smart Out moment, and I am being counted out.